The Apache warrior closed her eyes to die, but instead woke up in a farmer's bed. Ahioka, the Apache warrior, had always been different from other girls in her village. From a young age, she had shown courage, intelligence, and a strong will. While other children were learning to weave, cook, or care for animals, Ahioka spent her days running across the open plains, climbing trees, and practicing with her bow and spear. Her father, a respected warrior, had noticed her determination and skill early on. He had trained her not just to defend herself, but to protect their people, their land, and the traditions that had been passed down through generations. Life among the Apache was not easy. The tribe faced constant threats from rival tribes, settlers, and the harshness of nature itself. Survival required strength, courage, and quick thinking. Every warrior was expected to be ready for battle at a moment's notice, and Ahioka's father had made sure she was prepared for anything. He taught her how to move silently through the forests, how to listen to the wind for signs of danger, and how to shoot an arrow with deadly accuracy. But what set Ahioka apart was her heart. She had a deep love for her people and the land, and that love fueled her determination to be the best warrior she could be. By the time Ahioka reached her 17th year, she had already earned a reputation among her tribe. Stories of her bravery spread quickly. She had saved children from a stampeding herd of horses, led younger warriors in hunting expeditions, and even outwitted enemy scouts trying to sneak into Apache territory. Her skill in battle was unmatched for someone so young, and even the older warriors respected her courage and wisdom. But Ahioka did not seek glory. Her purpose was simple: to protect her people, their way of life, and the land they called home. The fateful day began like any other. The morning sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the plains. Ahioka and a small group of warriors were patrolling the outskirts of their territory. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of rushing water from a nearby river. Birds chirped in the trees, and the grass swayed gently in the breeze. But despite the calm, Ahioka sensed something unusual. Her instincts, honed through years of training, told her to be alert. She noticed tracks in the soil that did not belong to her people. The footprints were fresh, leading toward the village, and they belonged to armed men. Ahioka motioned for the others to follow quietly. She moved with the stealth of a shadow, her feet barely making a sound on the earth. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. The warriors followed her lead, trusting her judgment completely. As they approached a small clearing, Ahioka could see the enemy, a group of armed soldiers, unaware that they were being watched. They were planning to attack her village, to take what was not theirs, and to destroy the lives of her people. Ahioka's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. She knew she had to act fast. Without hesitation, she signaled to the warriors to split into two groups. One group would flank the enemy from the left, while she and a few others would approach from the right. The plan was simple but dangerous. Ahioka knew that any mistake could cost them their lives. She took a deep breath, steadying her hands and her mind. The wind shifted slightly, and she felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that always came before battle. Time seemed to slow as she nocked an arrow to her bow and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The battle began suddenly and violently. Ahioka's arrow flew with incredible speed, striking the first enemy soldier before he could react. Chaos erupted as the warriors attacked from both sides. The clash of weapons, the shouts of men, and the screams of pain filled the air. Ahioka moved with agility and precision, her movements almost like a dance. She ducked and rolled to avoid attacks, countering with her spear and bow. Each strike was measured, aimed to protect her people and neutralize the threat. Despite her skill and bravery, the enemy was relentless. They were more numerous than expected, and their determination was clear. Ahioka fought with everything she had, but she soon realized that she could not hold them off alone. She signaled to her fellow warriors, but they were already engaged in fierce combat. The noise, confusion, and fear made it difficult to think clearly. Her mind raced, trying to find a way to protect herself and her people at the same time. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, in the middle of the chaos, Ahioka felt a sharp pain in her side. She looked down to see blood soaking through her tunic. An enemy had struck her with a blade, catching her off guard. The pain was intense, but more than that, it was the fear that this might be the end. She stumbled, her strength waning, and for the first time in her life, Ahioka feared death. Her mind flashed to memories of her family, her tribe, and the plains she loved so dearly. She thought of the people she had trained with, laughed with, and protected. Her heart ached with the thought that she might never see them again. Ahioka fell to the ground, closing her eyes, preparing for the darkness that she believed was coming. She whispered a quiet prayer to the spirits of her ancestors, asking them to watch over her people and forgive her if she had failed them. The sounds of the battle grew distant, and a heavy sense of finality settled over her. She felt herself slipping away, her body growing weaker with each heartbeat. The world seemed to fade into a blur of light and shadow, but just as she felt death's cold grip, something unexpected happened. The pain remained, but it was no longer unbearable. The voices of the enemy and her fellow warriors became muffled, and she felt herself being lifted gently. A warmth surrounded her, soft and steady, unlike anything she had ever experienced on the battlefield. For a moment, she could not understand what was happening. She had closed her eyes to die, but now there was a strange sense of life, a force that seemed to be pulling her back from the edge of darkness. Ahioka's mind was clouded with confusion and disbelief. How could she still be alive? Who had found her in the midst of such danger? She wanted to open her eyes, but felt too weak. The last thing she remembered was the battlefield, the chaos, and the pain. But now she sensed safety, even though she had no idea where she was. Her warrior instincts told her to be alert, but her body would not obey. Exhaustion overtook her, and she surrendered to the mysterious force that held her. As her consciousness faded and returned again in small waves, Ahioka realized that she was no longer on the battlefield. The sounds of battle were gone, replaced by quiet and stillness. She could feel the soft surface beneath her and the warmth surrounding her body. Her senses slowly returned, and with them came the realization that she had been saved, but by whom she did not yet know. Questions raced through her mind. Was it a stranger? A friend? A spirit of her ancestors? The answers were not clear, and for now she could do nothing but wait and recover. In those first moments of awakening, Ahioka felt a mixture of fear, relief, and curiosity. She had faced death and survived in a way she could not explain. Her warrior spirit was intact, but she also sensed that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. She had entered the unknown, and though she was afraid, a small spark of hope began to grow inside her. Perhaps this was not the end of her story, but the beginning of something new, something that would test not just her strength in battle, but her courage in life itself. Ahioka's eyes slowly opened, and the first thing she noticed was light, soft, warm sunlight streaming through. Small window. It was nothing like the blazing sun over the plains she knew so well. The room smelled faintly of bread and herbs, a comforting scent that made her feel strangely safe. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure of where she was or how she had gotten there. The last thing she remembered was the battlefield, the pain of the arrow wound, and the feeling of darkness creeping over her. Now, instead of chaos and death, there was quiet and warmth. She tried to sit up, but her body refused. Her limbs were weak, her muscles stiff, and a dull ache ran through her side where the enemy had struck. Panic tried to rise in her chest, but she forced it down. Taking shallow breaths, she looked around the room, taking in every detail. The walls were made of wood, simple but sturdy. A small table held a few bowls, a pitcher of water, and a loaf of bread. A chair sat neatly in the corner. Everything was calm, organized, and unlike anything she had seen in her nomadic Apache life. For a moment, Ahioka felt like she had stepped into a different world entirely. A soft voice broke the silence. "You're awake," it said gently. Ahioka's head turned slowly, and she saw a man standing near the doorway. He was not wearing armor or the clothing of a soldier. He was a simple farmer. His hands were rough from work, his clothes plain and clean. His eyes, however, were kind, and there was a calmness about him that made Ahioka's racing heart slow just slightly. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. "Where am I?" she managed to say. The man smiled faintly. "You're safe now. I found you in the forest near the edge of the river. You were badly hurt. I brought you here so you could rest and heal." His tone was gentle, free of judgment or suspicion. He did not demand answers, and he did not question her presence. He simply offered safety. Ahioka felt a strange mixture of relief and wariness. Her life as a warrior had taught her never to trust strangers easily, but something in his demeanor told her he meant no harm. She tried to sit up again, but pain shot through her body, forcing her to lie back. The farmer moved closer and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Don't try to move too quickly," he said kindly. "You've been through a lot, rest first, then we can talk." Ahioka nodded slightly, though she was not used to being cared for in this way. She was a warrior. She was trained to fight, to survive on her own, and to rely on her strength. Being helpless in someone else's care was a new and uncomfortable experience. Yet, despite her pride, she could not deny the comfort she felt from his presence. The first few days were the hardest. Ahioka was frustrated by her weakness. Her muscles ached from lying down for so long, her wound burned when she moved, and the smallest tasks felt impossible. She was used to being in control, to being the one who helped others, not the one who needed help. The farmer did everything he could to ease her discomfort. He cleaned her wounds carefully, changed her bandages, and brought her warm food. He never spoke down to her or treated her as less than a warrior. Instead, he treated her with quiet respect, acknowledging her strength even as she recovered. During those long days, Ahioka had time to think. She thought about the battle, the pain, and the fear she had felt as she lay on the ground, close to death. She remembered the sounds of the enemy approaching, the cries of her fellow warriors, and the moments when she thought she would not survive. She had been ready to close her eyes and let go, but somehow fate, or perhaps the kindness of this stranger, had given her another chance. That realization filled her with a mixture of gratitude, confusion, and unease. Why had she survived when others had not? Who was this man who had saved her life? As the days passed, Ahioka began to notice small details about her surroundings. The farmer's home was simple, yet everything was clean and cared for. There were shelves with jars of preserved fruits and vegetables, bundles of herbs hanging from the ceiling, and a small fireplace that filled the room with warmth. The farmer's movements were calm and purposeful. He worked quietly, never asking her to do anything she was not ready for. And slowly, as she lay in the soft bed, Ahioka began to feel a sense of safety she had never known on the battlefield. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the window, Ahioka spoke for the first time about the battle. I was hurt," she said quietly. "I thought I was going to die." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear she had kept inside. The farmer nodded. "You were very close to it," he said gently. "But you are strong. You fought to survive, and you are still here. That means something." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that Ahioka could feel deep in her chest. She had always believed that strength was only shown in battle, but perhaps there were other forms of strength she had not yet understood. As Ahioka's body healed, she began to move more freely. The farmer encouraged her, letting her take small steps around the home and yard. At first, she moved cautiously, afraid of falling or reopening her wound. But with each passing day, her confidence grew. She discovered that her body still held the strength she had trained for, even if it had been weakened. She could feel her muscles returning, her reflexes sharpening, and her mind clearing. The warrior within her was still alive, even in this peaceful place. Despite her recovery, Ahioka could not ignore the thoughts that weighed on her mind. She wondered about her tribe, her family, and the people she had left behind. Were they safe? Had the enemy attacked again? The uncertainty gnawed at her heart. The farmer noticed her worry but never pushed her for answers she could not provide. He simply offered companionship and quiet support, letting her process her thoughts at her own pace. His patience was different from anything she had experienced. It was gentle, steady, and unwavering. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Ahioka found herself sitting by the window, looking out over the fields. The golden light painted the landscape in warm hues. She thought about the life she had known, the battles she had fought, and the skills she had learned. And yet she also realized that there was a new world in front of her, a world where life did not revolve around survival and conflict. She could hear the farmer working outside, the soft clink of tools, and the distant chirping of birds. For the first time in her life, she considered the possibility of a life that was not defined by war. The farmer eventually came to sit beside her, carrying a small tray with water and bread. "You are stronger than you know," he said quietly, "not just in body but in spirit. You survived because you never gave up, even when it seemed impossible." Ahioka looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and curiosity in her eyes. She had faced countless dangers before, but this was different. No battle, no enemy could have prepared her for the challenge of trusting someone else, of letting someone care for her when she had always relied on herself. As the days turned into weeks, Ahioka began to talk more with the farmer. She shared stories of her life in the tribe, the skills she had learned, and the battles she had fought. In return, the farmer shared stories of his own life, of tending the land, the seasons, and the small joys he found in simplicity. Their conversations were slow at first, filled with pauses and hesitation, but gradually they built a bridge of understanding between two worlds that had seemed so different. Ahioka realized that kindness could exist even in strangers, and that trust could grow slowly, like the sprouting of seeds in fertile soil. During this time, Ahioka's body fully healed, but she also began to notice changes in her heart. The fear and pain she had carried from the battlefield began to fade, replaced by a quiet curiosity and a sense of possibility. She learned to appreciate the simplicity of life in the farmer's home, the rhythm of daily chores, the sound of the wind in the trees, and the feeling of safety she had not known in years. She had been ready to die, yet here she was, alive, and experiencing a life that was unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. By the end of her first month in the farmer's care, Ahioka had grown stronger not just in body but in spirit. She had faced the possibility of death and emerged alive, and she was beginning to understand that life could offer more than constant struggle. The warrior within her was still present, ready to defend her people if necessary, but she also realized that strength could take many forms. Survival was not just about fighting, it was about endurance, adaptability, and even the courage to accept help. Ahioka's journey in the farmer's home was only beginning, but already she felt that her life had changed forever. She had been pulled back from the edge of death, not by her own skill or luck, but by the unexpected kindness of a stranger. And though she did not yet understand what lay ahead, she knew that she was no longer the same person who had fallen on the battlefield. She was alive, she was healing, and she was beginning to see that life could hold new possibilities, even in the most unexpected places. As the days passed, Ahioka grew stronger and more aware of her surroundings. The farmer, whose name she learned was Elias, treated her with steady kindness, never rushing her or expecting anything beyond what she could give. He would bring her water, help her with small chores, and speak to her in gentle tones, offering guidance without pressure. For Ahioka, this was a completely new experience. She had lived her entire life in the wild, surrounded by danger and the constant threat of attack. The idea that someone could care for her simply because it was the right thing to do was foreign, almost unbelievable. Elias did not ask about her past immediately. He let her recover physically and emotionally first, understanding that trust could not be forced. Slowly, Ahioka began to share fragments of her life. She told him about her tribe, the Apache people, the open plains, and the training she had undergone since childhood. She spoke of her father, a proud warrior who had taught her to respect the land and her people above all else. Each story was shared carefully, as though she were testing whether Elias could understand a world so different from his own. To her surprise, he listened without judgment, asking questions not out of curiosity alone, but out of genuine interest. Life in the small house and on the farm was peaceful compared to the chaos Ahioka had known. She began to notice the rhythms of daily work, the way the wind swayed the wheat, the sounds of chickens clucking in the yard, and the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven. At first, these simple things seemed almost too gentle for her, as if the world itself had softened around her. She struggled to reconcile the calmness with the warrior instincts that still pulsed within her. Every time she heard a sudden noise, her body tensed, ready to defend, even though no danger was present. Slowly, Elias helped her see that strength did not always mean fighting. Sometimes it meant patience, endurance, and the ability to adapt. One morning, while helping Elias tend to the small vegetable garden behind the house, Ahioka's thoughts drifted to her tribe. She wondered if they had survived the recent battles, if her family still waited for her return, and if they would ever forgive her for leaving. The fear and guilt were heavy, pressing on her chest like a stone. Elias noticed her silence and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It is natural to think of them," he said quietly, "but you cannot help them if you do not first take care of yourself. You were given another chance, Ahioka. Use it to grow, to heal, and to regain your strength." His words were not commands but gentle guidance, and she felt a strange warmth at the way he spoke, like someone truly believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. As the weeks went by, Ahioka's physical strength returned fully. She could run, lift, and carry as she had before, though she no longer used these abilities for battle. Instead, she helped with the farm work, learning the rhythms of planting, watering, and harvesting under Elia's patient instruction. She found satisfaction in these tasks, the way they required focus, care, and perseverance, much like the training she had received as a warrior. Yet, unlike her previous life, there was no constant threat, no immediate danger. She was learning that life could have moments of peace without losing purpose. Ahioka also began to learn more about Elias as a person. He was not a warrior like she had known, but he had his own form of courage. He had chosen a life of simplicity, of nurturing and protecting, rather than conquering. He spoke of the land as if it were a living thing, deserving of respect and care. He showed her how to plant seeds in neat rows, how to care for animals, and even how to cook simple meals. Ahioka realized that strength could take many forms. Courage was not always shown through combat. It could be found in patience, kindness, and the quiet acts of daily life. Despite her growing comfort, Ahioka still struggled with her identity. She was a warrior at heart, trained to fight and defend, yet she was now living in a world without war. Some nights she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of her tribe, wondering if she was betraying them by not returning immediately. She questioned whether she had abandoned her duty. The guilt pressed heavily on her, but she also noticed a growing understanding. Survival was not just about fighting. Sometimes it meant living, adapting, and learning from new experiences. Elias sensed her inner conflict without her needing to explain it. One evening he brought her a small loaf of bread and a cup of water, sitting beside her on the wooden bench near the fireplace. "You are not abandoning anyone by being alive," he said softly. "You carry your tribe in your heart. Being strong does not always mean fighting. Sometimes it means surviving, learning, and returning when the time is right." Ahioka looked into his eyes and saw a depth of understanding that comforted her. She realized that his words were not just advice. They were a reflection of a life lived with care, thought, and courage in its own quiet way. Over time, Ahioka began to notice subtle changes within herself. Her mind, once consumed by the constant tension of war, began to find clarity. She could think without panic, plan without fear, and even dream of possibilities beyond battle. She found joy in simple achievements: a plant growing strong, a chicken laying eggs, a loaf of bread baked perfectly. These small successes brought a sense of accomplishment she had never known on the battlefield, where survival was often measured by life or death, not by growth or care. Ahioka also started to interact more with the local village, cautiously at first. She observed the people, noting how their lives revolved around work, family, and community. She admired their cooperation, the way neighbors helped one another, and the smiles exchanged in simple greetings. For a girl who had known only the harshness of constant survival, this sense of community was strange yet comforting. She realized that there were ways to be strong that did not involve fighting, that a person could contribute to the world without violence, and that her skills as a warrior could be transformed into protection in other forms, like tending the land and caring for those around her. One day, Elias asked her to help repair a small fence that had been damaged by wind. At first, Ahioka hesitated. She had never done such work, and the thought of using her hands for something other than weapons felt foreign. Yet as she worked alongside him, hammering wood and securing posts, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Her hands, trained for battle, now built something lasting, protecting not against enemies but against the elements. She realized that this, too, was a form of strength, one that required patience, precision, and endurance. Despite her growing connection with Elias and the farm, Ahioka's thoughts often returned to her people. She imagined the plains, the fires at night, and the faces of those she had left behind. These memories were bittersweet. They reminded her of her identity, her purpose, and the responsibilities she could not forget. Yet the more she stayed in Elias' care, the more she understood that she could carry these memories without being consumed by them. She could honor her past while embracing a new chapter of life. Ahioka's transformation was not immediate, nor was it without struggle. There were days when fear, guilt, and doubt pressed heavily on her heart. She would wake in the night, tense and alert, expecting danger that was no longer there. She missed the adrenaline of the battlefield, the clarity of life-or-death decisions, and the camaraderie of warriors fighting beside her. Yet slowly, she began to see that life could be full and meaningful even without constant peril. Strength, she realized, could be found in healing, learning, and growing. By the end of several months, Ahioka had fully recovered. Her body was strong, her mind alert, and her heart more open than it had been in years. She could run across the fields, lift heavy baskets of produce, and handle farm tools with ease. More importantly, she had discovered a new way to be strong, a way that involved care, patience, and the ability to trust. The warrior within her still lived, but it had been tempered by experience, compassion, and understanding. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Ahioka stood beside Elias, looking out at the golden light reflecting on the land. "I never imagined life could be like this," she said quietly. Elias smiled, his eyes calm and kind. "Life is full of surprises," he said. "Sometimes survival is not just about fighting. It's about learning, adapting, and finding strength in unexpected places." Ahioka nodded, understanding for the first time that her journey was far from over. She was still a warrior, still strong, and still connected to her people. But she had also discovered that life could hold moments of peace, joy, and growth that were just as powerful as any battle. As the weeks turned into months, Ahioka grew stronger, not just in body but in mind and spirit. Her days were filled with work on the farm, learning new skills, and helping Elias with the animals, the garden, and the house. Yet, despite her outward strength, she felt a restlessness deep inside her chest. The quiet life, though peaceful, could not completely erase the fire that had burned within her since childhood. Her warrior instincts remained sharp, her senses alert to danger, and her heart still ached with thoughts of her tribe, her family, and the battles she had fought. Some mornings, Ahioka would wake before the sun, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline and the sharp edge of her instincts. She would quietly move through the house, practicing with a wooden spear or shooting arrows into the soft earth behind the farm. The farmer noticed her need for movement and focus, and he never questioned it. Instead, he offered her a space to practice, understanding that part of her needed to stay connected to who she was. For Ahioka, these moments were a delicate balance between her past and present, between survival and peace. Despite her growing acceptance of farm life, Ahioka struggled with feelings of guilt and doubt. She thought of her people often, imagining their faces, their laughter, and the daily life she had left behind. She wondered if they had been attacked again, if her family was safe, or if they believed she had abandoned them. These thoughts weighed heavily on her, pressing on her heart like stones. She would often find herself staring into the distance, lost in memories and what-ifs, feeling torn between the life she had known and the life she had been given. One evening, after a long day of work, Ahioka sat quietly by the fire, her hands calloused from planting, tending animals, and helping Elias. She stared into the flames, letting the heat warm her face, and thought about the journey that had brought her here. The battle that had nearly claimed her life seemed like a distant memory now, but its lessons were ingrained deep within her. She realized that she had been given a second chance, a chance to live, to heal, and to find strength in ways she had never known before. But the question remained, could she truly embrace this new life without forgetting who she was? Elias noticed her silence and sat beside her, offering a quiet presence rather than words. After a moment, he spoke softly. "Strength is not only measured by the battles you fight, Ahioka. Sometimes the greatest courage comes from healing, from facing your fears, and from choosing to live when the past still haunts you." His words resonated deeply within her. She had always believed that strength meant fighting, surviving, and conquering. Now, she began to understand that strength could also mean patience, resilience, and the ability to face her own heart with honesty. As the days passed, Ahioka began to find ways to reconcile her warrior identity with her new life. She continued to train her body, but now her focus shifted from preparation for battle to mastery of herself. She practiced archery not to kill, but to hone her precision, focus, and patience. She ran through the fields not to chase or escape, but to feel the freedom of movement and the joy of life. Her senses, once hyper-aware of danger, began to notice beauty, the rustle of leaves, the flight of birds, and the subtle changes in the wind. These small details reminded her that the world was not only a place of conflict, but also of wonder. Yet despite these discoveries, Ahioka's heart remained restless. She felt the pull of her past, the deep connection to her tribe and the land of her people. At times, she feared that living among settlers, even kind ones, would erase the lessons of her upbringing or dull the sharpness of her instincts. She wondered if she could ever return to her tribe, if they would welcome her, or if she would have changed too much to fit back into the life she had once known. These questions haunted her, making her nights restless and her thoughts heavy. Elias, ever patient, noticed the conflict within her. He did not try to force answers or tell her what to do. Instead, he offered her guidance through quiet presence and gentle conversation. One afternoon, as they repaired a section of fence together, he spoke without looking at her. "You do not have to choose between your past and your present, Ahioka. You carry your tribe, your strength, and your spirit wherever you go. And you carry the lessons of this life as well. Both can exist within you." His words struck her deeply. She realized that strength was not about choosing one identity over another. It was about embracing all parts of herself, even the parts that seemed in conflict. During this period, Ahioka also began to feel a growing bond with Elias. At first, it was simply gratitude for his care and kindness. But over time, it deepened into a quiet friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. She admired his patience, his wisdom, and the way he moved through life with calm determination. She noticed the way he tended to the animals, nurtured the land, and approached each task with care. In him, she saw a different kind of strength, one that did not rely on weapons or battle, but on courage of a quieter, steadier kind. Ahioka also learned to find joy in small things. She discovered the satisfaction of planting seeds and watching them grow, the thrill of catching a fish in the river, and the simple pleasure of baking bread. These tasks, though mundane compared to the excitement of battle, brought a sense of accomplishment and peace she had never known. She began to understand that life could be meaningful without constant danger, and that her skills as a warrior could be transformed into skills for survival, protection, and care in this new world. Despite her growing comfort, Ahioka never forgot the lessons of her past. She continued to practice archery, spear techniques, and hand-to-hand combat in secret, ensuring that her body remained ready if danger ever returned. But now, these skills were balanced with compassion, patience, and reflection. She realized that being a warrior was not just about fighting. It was about understanding when to act, when to wait, and when to protect life rather than take it. This realization marked a turning point in her journey, allowing her to blend her past with her present. One morning, a visitor came to the farm, a traveling trader who had heard of the warrior who had survived near the forest. He asked Ahioka about her life, her battles, and her skills. At first, she hesitated, unsure of how to share her story with someone outside her tribe. But then she realized that sharing her experiences did not diminish them. It allowed her to honor her past, reflect on her journey, and see how far she had come. The trader listened in awe, fascinated by her courage and resilience. And for the first time, Ahioka understood that her strength could inspire others, not just through battle, but through survival, adaptation, and the ability to embrace change. As time passed, Ahioka's bond with Elias continued to grow. They shared long conversations about life, dreams, and the world beyond the farm. She began to teach him some of the skills she had learned as a warrior, tracking animals, understanding the signs of the land, and listening to nature in ways he had never known. In return, he taught her the patience of farming, the rhythm of seasons, and the quiet satisfaction of nurturing life. Together, they built a small world of understanding, respect, and trust, blending two very different experiences into a shared life. Despite these moments of peace, Ahioka's heart still felt the pull of the unknown. She thought often of her tribe, wondering if she would ever return to them, and if so, how they would react to the changes she had undergone. The tension between her past and present remained, a delicate balance she navigated every day. She understood now that life was not about choosing one path, but about integrating all experiences, learning from each, and using that wisdom to guide her future. By the end of this period, Ahioka had transformed. She was no longer the restless, fearful girl who had fallen in battle. She was a warrior tempered by survival, resilience, and compassion. She had learned that courage could take many forms, that strength could be quiet as well as fierce, and that life could be meaningful without constant danger. She had survived death, embraced life, and begun to find a new purpose in a world that had seemed so foreign at first. Ahioka's journey was far from over, but she now understood that she had the power to shape her own path. She could honor her past while embracing her present, carry the lessons of her tribe while learning from the kindness of others, and remain a warrior even in a life of peace. Her heart, once heavy with guilt and fear, now held hope, curiosity, and a quiet strength that promised a future full of possibilities. The months passed quietly, yet meaningfully, and Ahioka felt a change within herself that she had never expected. Life on the farm, once so foreign and even frustrating, had become a rhythm she could embrace. She no longer viewed each day as a challenge to survive, but as an opportunity to learn, grow, and discover new ways to use her strength. Even though she carried the memory of battle and the warrior within her, she began to understand that courage was not always measured by fighting enemies. It could be measured by endurance, patience, and the love she gave to life itself. Ahioka had fully adapted to her daily routine alongside Elias. She helped him with the planting and harvesting, fed the animals, mended fences, and even began preparing simple meals. Each task, no matter how small, gave her a sense of purpose. She realized that every action, whether tending a garden or protecting her people in battle, required care, thought, and attention. Her warrior instincts, once focused solely on survival and defense, had transformed into skills that helped nurture and preserve life. This shift in perspective brought her a profound sense of peace, something she had not known even in her most victorious moments on the battlefield. Despite her comfort, Ahioka never forgot her past. She often thought of her tribe, wondering how her people were faring and whether they remembered her. At night, when the stars stretched across the sky like silver threads, she would picture the open plains, the fires of her village, and the faces of those she loved. These thoughts sometimes stirred feelings of sadness or guilt, but they also reminded her of the strength and resilience that had brought her this far. She realized that she could honor her past without being trapped by it. Her memories were a part of her, but they no longer defined every moment of her life. One day, while walking through the fields with Elias, Ahioka paused to watch the sunlight glint off the river nearby. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth on her skin and the cool breeze on her face. "I never imagined life could feel like this," she said quietly, almost to herself. Elias smiled, understanding her unspoken thoughts. "Life has many paths," he said softly. "Sometimes the path we expect is not the one we need. You survived because you were strong, but now you are learning that there is strength in peace as well as in battle." His words resonated deeply, confirming what she had begun to feel for months, the truth that survival was not only about fighting, but about living fully and wisely. Ahioka began to notice small joys she had never experienced before. She marveled at the growth of plants, the song of birds, and the simple laughter shared with Elias during long afternoons of work. She felt pride in tasks that once seemed mundane, repairing a fence that kept animals safe, gathering vegetables from the garden, or caring for an injured bird she found near the river. Each of these moments was a testament to her ability to adapt, to survive, and to thrive in a world that she had once thought completely unfamiliar. Her heart, once hardened by the constant threat of violence, softened with each passing day. Though she had learned to find peace in the simplicity of farm life, Ahioka's warrior instincts never disappeared. She continued to practice archery, spear techniques, and hand-to-hand movements, not for battle but for discipline and focus. She discovered that these exercises gave her clarity of mind and control over her emotions. Her body, trained for years to respond to danger, could now move with purpose and precision in a world where danger was rare, but life was rich with challenges of a different kind. In this way, she honored her past while embracing her present. Ahioka's relationship with Elias grew deeper over time. Their bond was not one of dependency, but of mutual respect and friendship. They learned from each other, sharing knowledge and understanding across the boundaries of their very different lives. Elias admired her courage, wisdom, and resilience, while Ahioka came to value his patience, kindness, and perspective on life. Together, they created a small sanctuary in which both could thrive, blending the lessons of battle with the lessons of peace, and creating a new understanding of strength and purpose. The seasons changed, painting the farm in colors she had never fully appreciated before. Spring brought fresh growth and the promise of new beginnings. Summer offered long days of work and sunlight, teaching her the joy of perseverance and the satisfaction of completing tasks. Autumn reminded her of change, the beauty of letting go, and the preparation necessary for survival. And winter, though harsh, revealed the quiet endurance needed to face challenges with patience and care. Through these cycles, Ahioka learned that life was not a single battle to be won, but a series of moments, each requiring attention, courage, and mindfulness. Ahioka also began to reach out to her community, slowly building trust and connections with nearby neighbors. She shared stories of her past, teaching the children about courage, respect, and the importance of protecting what one loves. She offered guidance and help when needed, using her skills and wisdom to contribute to the lives of others. These acts, though small, gave her a sense of belonging she had not known on the battlefield. She realized that being a warrior did not require isolation or constant struggle. She could be part of a community, protect and nurture, and still honor her identity. Even as she embraced this life, Ahioka knew that she could not forget the lessons of her past. She practiced vigilance, remaining aware of the world beyond the farm. She kept her skills sharp, prepared for unexpected danger, and ready to act if needed. But she had learned to balance this readiness with calm, understanding that true strength came from knowing when to fight and when to preserve life. Her identity as a warrior was no longer just about conflict. It was about wisdom, judgment, and the courage to live fully in all circumstances. One day, as Ahioka walked along the riverbank, she paused to reflect on how far she had come. She had faced death, survived against all odds, and discovered a new life filled with peace, purpose, and hope. She realized that the farmer who had saved her life had not only offered her shelter, but had given her the opportunity to see herself in a new light. She understood now that survival was not only about enduring hardship, but about embracing life, learning from experience, and finding joy in unexpected places. Ahioka felt a deep gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined to live it fully. She continued to grow, to help, and to teach, finding meaning in the rhythm of daily life and in the relationships she built. She had learned that life could be rich, meaningful, and even joyful when approached with patience, courage, and care. The warrior within her remained strong and unyielding, but now tempered by wisdom, compassion, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to live. As she stood beside Elias one evening, watching the sun sink below the horizon, Ahioka felt a sense of completion and purpose. She had faced death and survived, learned to trust, and discovered that life held more than survival alone. She had embraced a world that was once unfamiliar, finding strength not only in herself, but in her connection with others. And she understood that her journey was not about leaving her past behind, but about carrying it forward, using it to guide her, and allowing it to shape the person she was becoming. In the quiet of the evening, Ahioka closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She felt the warmth of the earth beneath her feet, the steady presence of Elias at her side, and the calm of a life she had fought to reach. For the first time, she did not feel torn between two worlds. She knew that she could honor her past while embracing her present. She could be a warrior and a nurturer, a protector and a learner, fierce yet gentle. And in that understanding, she found a peace that no battle had ever given her. Ahioka's journey had been long and challenging, filled with fear, pain, and uncertainty. Yet it had led her to a place of balance, resilience, and growth. She had discovered that life's true battles were not always fought with weapons, but with patience, compassion, and the courage to embrace the unknown. She had learned that survival was only the first step, and that living fully required strength of heart, mind, and spirit. As the stars appeared one by one in the night sky, Ahioka smiled softly. She had survived, she had grown, and she had found a new purpose. She had learned to balance her warrior spirit with the lessons of life, to honor her past while embracing her present, and to find strength in peace as well as in battle. Her journey was far from over, but she knew now that she had the courage, wisdom, and resilience to face whatever came next. And so, the Apache warrior who had once closed her eyes to die had awakened to a new life, one filled with hope, learning, and unexpected joy. She had discovered that strength could take many forms, that courage could exist in quiet acts of care, and that life, when embraced fully, could be as rich and meaningful as any victory won on the battlefield. Ahioka had not only survived, she had truly begun to live.